One of the most fascinating topics in rock and roll and history is the idea that a person could become a better player if he had a little supernatural help. And when we talk about supernatural help, we talk about a crossroads, usually at midnight, where a blues man would take his guitar and he'd sit outside and he'd wait for old Scratch to appear and he'd make his deal. But what's fascinating is in other times, other great musicians were said to have sold their soul to the devil. Paganini was so blazingly fast with his fiddle that most people thought he had supernatural help, that the devil himself drew the bow across the strings. To add a little flair, Paganini would have his long black coarse hair hanging down across his corpse-like face. He dressed in black, and when he would play the violin, the story goes that he would saw 3 of the strings halfway in two, so that as he performed and hit the bow across the string, one string would snap, followed by the next one, until there was only one string left and he was playing these incredibly lightning-fast passages on that one string. Paganini was so believable as a disciple of the devil for giving him his supernatural fiddle power that he had to bring a note from his mother when he traveled in France saying that the devil was not his father. When Paganini became extremely sick on his deathbed, a priest came to give him the last rites, and Paganini's excuse was, "Get out of here, I'm not dying." Unfortunately for Paganini, he died within 2 days after his visit from his confessor and priest. Since he hadn't confessed his sins, the townspeople were sure that Paganini had practiced the black arts, so his body left unburied, because a person who was a servant of the devil had to be buried on hallowed ground. A traveling salesman purchased Paganini's body and put him on display in a glass case, and his body was later buried, dug up again. So when we talk about supernatural soliciting, you might remember that the devil's favorite instrument may not be the guitar, but instead a violin. Remember the song, "The Devil Went Down to Georgia"? When the devil appears and challenges Johnny to a duel, what do they play for? And the answer is a golden fiddle. And if you've read Faust by Goethe, when Mephistopheles appears, he's a demon holding a violin. So not all string instruments like the guitar do the devil's bidding. Now, why the crossroads? In English common law and in the superstition of the 16th, 17th century, we found that criminals, after their execution, were buried in crossroads because it was unhallowed ground and people could walk over their graves. We know in literature that witches were said to meet at crossroads. In Jim Morrison's poetry, he mentions dogs being slayed at the crossroads. So the story is set. The crossroads that's guarded by the African god Legba, who took messages from the dead to the living, it was the perfect place for any man who was looking for a deal to wait. To wait at the stroke of midnight, play a few chords, and wait for a tall black man to appear. The tall black man, you dare not look at him because the story goes that his face was unseen, but his eyes glowed a mysterious and frightening hellfire red. The blues man, when he felt the presence, would hold his guitar behind his back. The tall black man would take it, and slowly you would hear the strings picked in order. In this case, into some mysterious open tuning. And when the blues man reached back over his shoulder and took the guitar, the pact was made. And the pact was simple. The blues man would be given the right to play the guitar, to make incredible music, to gain immortality for his sound, to gain the love of worshiping women, and to make money. The only problem was, his life would be a short one. He would know fame, but he'd never live to be an old man to enjoy it. This is Gary Patterson. Thanks for walking with me on the dark side. You know, you may think some of these stories are fact and some are fiction, but one thing for certain, you'll never listen to your music exactly the same way again.